"Mom, why does this lady look scared?" Emma Mitchell was 12 years old enough to notice things, old enough to ask questions, too young to understand that the photograph in her hands was evidence, that the scared lady had been missing for 6 years, that her mother had just stumbled onto the biggest trafficking case in FBI history, and definitely too young to know that asking that question out loud in a motel room with paper-thin walls where the wrong person might be listening had just started a 72-hour countdown. Sarah had to make a choice: protect her daughter and burn the evidence, or risk everything to answer one question. What happened to the 20 people in these photographs? But to understand how Sarah Mitchell ended up holding evidence that the FBI had been searching for, we need to go back to 48 hours earlier, back to the moment when rock bottom stopped being a metaphor and became an address. Back to the morning Sarah woke up in her car with $287 to her name and a daughter who deserved so much better. Sarah Mitchell was 49 years old, a widow, a mother, and, as of 3 months ago, homeless. Her husband David had been a police officer, 22 years on the force, before a heart attack took him at 47. The funeral costs, the medical bills, the mortgage they could no longer afford on just her salary as a school secretary. One by one, the dominoes had fallen. First the house, then the apartment, then the weekly motel room, and now they were living in a 2003 Honda Civic with a broken heater and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. Emma never complained. Not once. She did her homework in the public library. She showered at the community center. She told her friends at school that they were renovating their house. That's why she couldn't have anyone over. 12 years old and already carrying the weight of adult lies. Sarah saw it in her daughter's eyes every morning. The fear that this was permanent, the shame of pretending everything was fine, the exhaustion of being brave. Sarah had applied to 63 jobs in the last 4 months: administrative assistant, receptionist, data entry clerk, retail associate, anything, everything. The responses were always the same: overqualified, not the right fit. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. She knew what they really meant. At 49, she was too old, too expensive, too likely to need health insurance and time off and all the things that younger workers didn't ask for yet. She had no family left to ask for help. Her parents were gone. Her brother lived across the country and they hadn't spoken in 8 years, not since he'd accused her of marrying David for his pension. She had friends, or she used to, but there's only so many times you can borrow $20, only so many nights you can sleep on someone's couch before the invitations stop coming. Before the text messages go unanswered, before you realize that poverty makes people uncomfortable in ways they can't quite explain. The eviction notice had come 2 days ago. Well, not an eviction exactly. You can't evict someone from a car. But the motel manager had made it clear. They'd been parking in his lot for 3 weeks, using the bathroom in the lobby, and his patience was gone. 48 hours to find somewhere else. 48 hours before even this small dignity was taken from them. Sarah had spent the previous night awake, staring at her phone, scrolling through options that didn't exist. The women's shelter was full, capacity reached 2 weeks ago, with a waiting list that stretched into February. It was November. The temperatures were dropping. The thought of Emma sleeping in the car through a winter night made Sarah's chest tight with panic she couldn't afford to show. That's when she'd seen the ad. Public storage auction, Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Units being sold for non-payment, cash only, as is, no refunds. Sarah had been to exactly one storage auction in her life, 3 years ago with David. He'd bought a unit full of old tools for $100, spent a weekend cleaning and organizing, sold everything for $400. 4 hours of work, $300 profit. He'd been so proud talking about doing it again, maybe making it a side business. Sarah had $287. The auction started at 8. She had nothing left to lose. The storage facility was on the east side of town, a sprawling complex of orange metal units that stretched across 3 acres like a prison for people's abandoned dreams. Sarah arrived at 7:45, Emma beside her, both of them wearing every layer they owned because the car's heater had finally given out completely. The parking lot was already filling up. Trucks with empty cargo beds, vans with business names painted on the sides, professional buyers, the kind of people who did this for a living, who knew what to look for, who could spot value in garbage. Sarah felt immediately out of place. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her shoes had a hole in the left sole that she'd covered with duct tape. She carried a canvas shopping bag because she didn't own a proper toolkit. Emma stayed close to her side, quiet and watchful in the way she'd learned to be. Drawing attention meant questions. Questions meant lies. Lies meant shame. The auctioneer was a man named Frank Delacroix, 60-something with a belly that spoke of good living and a voice that could cut through concrete. He stood on a small platform near the first unit, a microphone in one hand, a clipboard in the other. Around him, 30, maybe 40 people clustered, some chatting easily with the confidence of regulars, others hanging back like Sarah, trying to understand the rules of a game they'd never played. Frank's voice boomed across the lot. "All right, folks, listen up. We got 12 units going up for sale today. You get 5 minutes to look. You do not touch, you do not enter, you bid with your head, not your heart, and you pay cash immediately if you win. We clear." A chorus of agreement. "Good, let's make some money. Unit 104, come on down." They moved as a group, a strange parade of treasure hunters and desperate gamblers. Unit 104 was 10 by 10, filled with furniture that looked expensive until you got close enough to see the water damage and mold. Bidding started at 500, sold for 650 to a man in a red pickup truck. Unit 115, packed with boxes of old books, started at 200, sold for 375. Unit 123, Christmas decorations and children's toys, started at 150. No bids passed. Sarah watched and learned. The professional buyers barely glanced at most units. They knew what they wanted: electronics, tools, antiques, anything that could be resold quickly for reliable profit. They walked away from uncertainty. They didn't gamble. Unit 217 came up 8th in the rotation. Frank led them around the back of the complex, past the nicer, larger units near the front, to the older section where the metal was rusted and the numbers were faded. He cut the lock with bolt cutters, a sharp snap that made Emma flinch. The door rolled up with a screech of protesting metal. And there it was, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, black trash bags. Dozens of them, maybe 100, packed so tightly that Sarah couldn't see the back wall. The smell that rolled out was musty, mildew mixed with something floral, like old perfume, fighting a losing battle against time. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Groans, laughter, shaking heads. "You gotta be kidding me. Nobody's touching that. Frank, this is a waste of time." One by one, the professional buyers turned away, already heading back toward the next unit. This wasn't treasure. This was someone's job to throw away. Sarah stared at those trash bags and felt something shift in her chest. Everyone else saw garbage. She saw possibility, because she knew something they didn't. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be the thing people walked past without seeing. She knew that sometimes the most valuable things came wrapped in the ugliest packages. David had taught her that. Frank's voice cut through her thoughts. All right, I know it don't look like much, but someone's paying for this unit for 3 years before they stopped. That's gotta count for something. Who'll give me $500? Silence. 400. More silence. 300? Come on, folks, $300 to make this my problem instead of yours. A few chuckles, but no bids. Sarah's hand moved before her brain could stop it. 250. Every head turned. Frank squinted at her like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. Say again, ma'am? $250. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Frank grinned. "Now, that's what I like to hear. I got $250. Who'll give me $275? He looked around expectantly. The crowd had already lost interest, turning back toward the next unit. $250 going once. He paused, giving one last chance for competition. $250 going twice. $275. The voice came from Sarah's left. She turned and saw him for the first time. A man, late 40s maybe, well-dressed in a way that didn't match the storage auction crowd. Dark suit, expensive shoes, a watch that probably cost more than Sarah's car. He wasn't looking at the unit. He was looking at Sarah. Her stomach dropped. Someone else wanted it. Someone with money. She glanced at Emma, saw her daughter's worried expression. They had $287 total. If she went to $300, they'd have negative $13 to their names. But if she walked away now, they had nothing. $287 in 48 hours until they had nowhere to sleep. $300. The words came out like a prayer. The man in the suit tilted his head, studying her. There was something calculating in his expression, like he was solving an equation. Then, to Sarah's shock, he shook his head and stepped back. Just like that, he'd stopped bidding. Frank's gavel came down, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "Sold! $300 to the lady in the blue jacket. Come see me for payment, ma'am, and congratulations on your new pile of garbage." Laughter rippled through the crowd as they moved on. Sarah's hands were shaking as she counted out the bills. 15 20s. It took everything they had plus $13 Emma had been saving from birthday money. Frank handed her the key and a form to sign. "You got 72 hours to clear it out. Otherwise, it goes to the dump and you forfeit your payment. Need a truck? I'll manage." Sarah had no idea how. "Your funeral." Frank moved on to the next unit, his voice already booming about, "Vintage furniture, folks, real wood." Sarah and Emma stood alone in front of Unit 217. The black trash bags seemed to multiply now that they belonged to her, an impossible mountain of unknown contents. "Mom," Emma's voice was small, "what if there's nothing good in there?" "Then we'll figure something out." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "We always do." But as they walked back to the car, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement in her peripheral vision. The man in the suit. He was sitting in a black SUV 3 rows away, and unless she was imagining it, he was writing something down while watching them leave. Not the unit. Them. A cold finger of unease traced down Sarah's spine. She told herself she was being paranoid, that there were a dozen innocent reasons for a well-dressed man to be at a storage auction, that not everything was a threat. She was wrong about that, but she wouldn't know for another 12 hours when she finally started opening those trash bags and discovered that sometimes the worst thing that can happen isn't losing everything. It's finding something you were never meant to see. Sarah and Emma returned to Unit 217 3 hours later, armed with a dozen empty boxes Sarah had pulled from behind a grocery store and a determination born of pure necessity. The facility was quieter now, the auction crowd gone, just a few people loading their winnings into trucks and vans. The sun was high and cold, the kind of November afternoon that promised an even colder night. Sarah rolled up the door and stared at her $300 gamble. In the harsh daylight, the trash bags looked even less promising, but there was nothing to do except start. She pulled the first bag down from the top of the pile, surprised by its weight. Not heavy, but substantial. Definitely not trash. Ready? She looked at Emma, who nodded with the kind of bravery that broke Sarah's heart. The first bag opened to reveal clothes, women's clothes, and not just any clothes. Designer labels, Chico's, Talbot's, Ann Taylor, some with tags still attached, the prices making Sarah's breath catch. $89 for a blouse, $120 for slacks. These weren't thrift store finds. These were expensive, quality pieces that someone had either never worn or barely worn. "Mom, look at this sweater." Emma held up a cashmere cardigan, soft gray with pearl buttons, the tag still dangling. Nordstrom, $135. Sarah's mind raced. Even used, even at a consignment shop, these clothes could bring in real money. Not fortune, but enough. Maybe enough for first and last month's rent on an apartment. Maybe enough to stop living in their car. They opened bag after bag. More clothes, dozens of pieces. Size 10, maybe 12. Someone tall, someone with sophisticated taste. Mixed in were shoes, 9 West, aerosols, some still in boxes, and accessories, scarves, belts, a few handbags that made Sarah's hands tremble as she recognized the quality. "Who throws this stuff away?" Emma asked, carefully folding a silk blouse. "Someone who didn't throw it away," Sarah murmured. "Someone who stopped paying for this unit. Which means something happened, something that made all of this," she gestured at the bags, "not matter anymore." They worked for 2 hours, organizing clothes into boxes by type and size. Sarah's initial panic began to ease, replaced by cautious hope. This wasn't a disaster. This might actually work. She'd take everything to a consignment shop tomorrow, see what they'd offer. Even if she only got 30% of retail value, they were looking at thousands of dollars. It was Emma who found the first piece of paper. She'd opened a bag near the back, expecting more clothes, and instead pulled out a stack of manila folders bound with a rubber band. "Mom, what are these?" Sarah took the folders, her fingers dusty and cold. The top one was labeled in neat handwriting, "Receipts, 2016-2018. Inside were exactly that. Receipts from stores, restaurants, gas stations, normal life documented in thermal paper and credit card statements. But at the top of each receipt was a name, Marcus Reed, and an address in the northern part of the city. "Marcus Reed," Sarah said aloud, testing the name. So that was the storage unit's owner, or had been. She opened the second folder. More receipts, these ones from 2018-2019. Same name. Then business cards, probably 50 of them, collected from various places. Lawyers, accountants, a therapist, a financial advisor. Marcus Reed had been professional, connected, someone who kept detailed records. The third folder made Sarah pause. It was photographs. Not family snapshots, but 8x10 professional prints. Marcus Reed with various people at what looked like charity events, fundraisers, formal dinners. In every photo, Marcus was smiling, well-dressed, confident. A man in his 50s, Sarah guessed, with graying hair and kind eyes. In some photos, he wore a press badge. Journalist, maybe? "He looks nice," Emma said, peering over Sarah's shoulder. "Yeah," Sarah agreed, "he does." But she was thinking about the tense. Looked nice, past tense. Because people who are alive and well don't stop paying for storage units full of expensive belongings. People who are alive and well don't abandon documentation of their entire professional life. Something had happened to Marcus Reed, and Sarah was now the custodian of whatever he'd left behind. They continued unpacking as the afternoon light faded. More clothes, more shoes. Then in a bag near the very back, something different. A jewelry box. Wooden, old, the kind that played a tinny tune when you opened it. Inside were pieces that made Sarah's breath stop. Real jewelry, gold bracelets, a strand of pearls, earrings set with what looked like genuine sapphires. A man's watch, heavy and silver. "Mom, is this real?" Emma whispered. "I think so." Sarah's hands were shaking again, but for a different reason. This wasn't consignment shop money. This was serious money. This was life-changing money. She quickly closed the box and set it aside, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. The unit's door was wide open. Anyone walking by could see what they'd found. She glanced around, paranoid, but the facility seemed empty except for one person loading boxes into a van 2 rows over. "We should go," Sarah said abruptly. "We'll come back tomorrow, finish then." "But we're not done." "Tomorrow, Emma, please." Something in her mother's voice made Emma nod without argument. They loaded the boxes of clothes into the car's trunk and back seat, filled every available space until they could barely see out the rear window. The jewelry box Sarah kept in her canvas bag, close to her body. As they drove away, Sarah checked her rearview mirror. The parking lot was empty. No black SUV, no well-dressed man, just shadows lengthening across orange metal and concrete. She told herself the unease in her stomach was hunger. They hadn't eaten since the free breakfast at the community center that morning. She was wrong about that too. The unease was instinct, the kind of instinct that had kept humans alive for millennia, the kind that screams danger when your conscious mind is still trying to rationalize everything away. Because back in Unit 217, still waiting in trash bags Sarah hadn't opened yet, was the real contents of Marcus Reed's storage unit. The reason he'd paid for it faithfully for 3 years. The reason he'd hidden everything in trash bags that looked like garbage. The reason someone had wanted him dead. And now, by sheer desperate chance, that someone knew exactly where to find it. Because Sarah Mitchell had raised her hand at an auction. Because she'd signed her name on Frank Delacroix's form. Because she'd given him her phone number and address when he'd asked for emergency contact information. She'd made herself visible, and in 72 hours, she was going to discover that invisibility had been the only thing keeping her safe. That night, Sarah and Emma slept in the Motel 6 parking lot again, the car packed so full of clothes they had to curl up in the front seats. Sarah set the jewelry box between them, unable to shake the feeling that taking her eyes off it would make it disappear. Emma fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's work. Sarah stayed awake, watching shadows move across the windshield, listening to every car that passed. At 2:30 in the morning, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. No words, just a photograph. It took Sarah's tired brain a moment to understand what she was seeing. Then her blood ran cold. It was a picture of her car, taken from maybe 20 feet away, taken within the last few minutes because she could see Emma asleep in the passenger seat, could see herself visible through the driver's window, illuminated by her phone screen. Someone was watching them, right now, in this parking lot. Sarah's hand flew to the door lock, checking it was engaged. Her eyes scanned the darkness outside, searching for movement, for a figure, for the black SUV she'd seen at the auction. Nothing. Just rows of parked cars and the buzzing neon of the motel sign. Another text came through. This one had words. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at the jewelry box, then at the boxes of clothes filling her car. What didn't belong to her? She'd bought the storage unit legally. Whatever was inside was hers now. That's how auctions worked. Her fingers shook as she typed back, "Who is this?" The response was immediate. "Someone who's giving you a chance. Put everything back. Walk away. Forget you ever opened that unit." Sarah stared at the message, fear and anger warring in her chest. Put everything back? Walk away from the only thing standing between them and sleeping on the street? Walk away from thousands of dollars in clothes and jewelry that could change their lives? But there was something else underneath those emotions. Curiosity. Because whoever this was, they weren't threatening her directly. They were warning her, which meant there was something in that storage unit that was worth more than money. Something dangerous. Sarah looked at her sleeping daughter and made a decision. She typed, "I don't know what you're talking about. I bought that unit legally. Whatever's inside is mine." This time, the response took longer. Long enough that Sarah wondered if maybe she'd called their bluff. Long enough that she started to convince herself that this was some elaborate prank, that she was overreacting, that everything was fine. Then her phone buzzed again. Another photo. This one wasn't of her car. It was of Emma, taken through the passenger window, close enough that Sarah could see the details of her daughter's sleeping face. Close enough that the photographer had been standing right next to their car. The text below read, "Last warning, Your daughter deserves a mother who makes smart choices." Sarah stopped breathing. Her eyes flew to the passenger seat, confirming Emma was still there, still sleeping, still safe. Then she grabbed the door handle, ready to jump out, ready to scream for help, ready to do anything to protect her child. But before she could move, headlights flashed across her windshield. A car was pulling out of the lot, dark-colored, maybe an SUV. It was too far away to see details, moving too fast to read the license plate. And then it was gone, disappeared into the night traffic, leaving Sarah alone with her racing heart and her sleeping daughter, and a question that would haunt her for the next 72 hours. What the hell was in that storage unit? Morning came too soon and without answers. Sarah hadn't slept, had spent the hours until sunrise gripping her phone and watching the parking lot like a soldier on watch. Emma woke at 6:30, groggy and stiff from sleeping in the car. She noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Mom, you okay?" "Fine, sweetie, just didn't sleep great." Sarah forced a smile that felt like broken glass. She couldn't tell Emma about the texts, couldn't add that fear to everything else her daughter was already carrying. They used the community center's bathroom to wash up and change. Sarah caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. 49 years old, but looking 60. Dark circles under her eyes, hair that needed cutting. The expression of someone being hunted. That's what she was now, wasn't it? Hunted. By someone who knew where they slept. Who could get close enough to photograph Emma through a car window. Who wanted whatever was in Marcus Reed's storage unit badly enough to threaten a child? The smart thing would be to do exactly what they said. Return everything. Walk away. Forget it existed. $300 was already gone, but their lives would be safe. That was the trade. Money for safety. But there was a problem with that plan. Sarah didn't know what everything meant. She'd opened maybe 20 of those trash bags. There were at least 80 more, and whoever sent those texts seemed to think she'd already seen something specific, something important enough to threaten her over, which meant going back to the storage unit wasn't just about the clothes and jewelry anymore. It was about understanding what kind of danger she was actually in. Knowledge is power, David used to say. You can't protect yourself from a threat you don't understand. So after Emma went to school, Sarah had insisted, needing her daughter somewhere public and safe, Sarah drove back to the storage facility. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white. Every car behind her might be following. Every stranger might be watching. Paranoia had replaced oxygen in her bloodstream. Unit 217 looked exactly as they'd left it. Door closed, lock secure. Sarah glanced around before opening it, scanning for the black SUV, for the well-dressed man, for anyone paying too much attention. The facility was busy with legitimate renters, people coming and going with boxes and furniture. Normal Saturday morning activity. She was just one more person among dozens. The door rolled up with its familiar screech. The remaining trash bags waited like dark secrets. Sarah took a breath and grabbed one from the middle of the pile, something she hadn't touched yesterday. It was heavier than the clothing bags had been. She opened it carefully. Files, dozens of manila folders, each one labeled with a name and a date. Sarah pulled one out at random. Jennifer Dawson, disappeared March 2017. Inside was a collection of documents, missing person reports, newspaper clippings, handwritten notes in what must be Marcus Reed's writing, photographs of a young woman, maybe 25, blonde hair and a bright smile. Sarah's stomach turned. She opened another folder. Michael Torres, disappeared July 2018. Same structure. Missing person report, news articles, notes, photos of a man in his 30s, arm around someone who'd been cropped out of the picture. Another folder. Lisa Chen, disappeared November 2016. Another. Robert Jackson, disappeared April 2019. On and on, each folder a person, each person disappeared. Sarah counted quickly. 20 folders in this bag alone, 20 people who'd vanished from their lives, their families, their futures. And Marcus Reed had been documenting them. She opened another trash bag with shaking hands. More folders, but these were different. Investigation notes, surveillance photos, locations with addresses and timestamps, a paper trail connecting the missing people to places, warehouses, shipping yards, private residences, and names. Not the victims' names, other names. Names that Sarah didn't recognize, but that appeared again and again across multiple folders. Vincent Karam, Dmitry Volkov, Elena Castellano. Marcus had been building a case. Against who? For what purpose? Sarah's journalism degree from 25 years ago was rusty, but she recognized investigative work when she saw it. This was months, maybe years of documentation. This was someone trying to expose something big. The next bag made everything crystal clear. It was full of photographs, but not the missing person kind. These were surveillance shots, grainy and taken from a distance. People meeting in parking lots, money changing hands, women and young girls being loaded into vans, their faces showing fear even in the poor quality images. And in several shots, clear as day, license plates, vehicle identification, faces that Marcus had circled and labeled. Sarah sat back on her heels, the pieces clicking into horrible place. Marcus Reed hadn't been collecting information about random disappearances. He'd been investigating a trafficking ring, human trafficking. And these files, these photographs, these names and locations, this was evidence, real, documented, prosecutable evidence. Her phone buzzed in her pocket and she nearly screamed. Another text from the unknown number. Still there? Still looking? You're making this harder than it needs to be. They were watching the storage facility. Right now. Sarah's eyes flew to the open door, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. She stood up quickly, scanning the parking lot for the source. Where were they? How could they see her? Then she spotted it. A security camera mounted on the building directly across from her unit. It wasn't a facility camera. Those were obvious, marked with warning signs. This was small, discreet, pointed directly at Unit 217. Someone had installed it. Someone who wanted to know when the unit was accessed. Sarah's mind raced. If they'd been monitoring it, they knew she'd been here yesterday, knew she'd taken boxes of clothes, knew she was back today, which meant they'd known from the moment she won the auction that she'd be a problem. The text messages weren't warnings. They were threats designed to scare her away before she found exactly what she'd just found. Her phone buzzed again. 30 minutes. Black SUV, northeast corner of the lot. Bring everything. We'll talk. Come alone or Emma's school has a very interesting lockdown drill. The mention of Emma's school made Sarah's vision blur with rage and terror. They knew where her daughter was. They could get to her. The implicit threat was clear: cooperate or lose everything that mattered. Sarah looked at the bags of evidence surrounding her. 20 people, 20 families who didn't know what happened to their loved ones. Marcus Reed had died trying to expose this. She was certain of that now. The suicide his sister had called murder. And now Sarah had two choices: save herself and let this evidence disappear back into the darkness, or do what Marcus couldn't: finish. She thought about David, about the promise she'd made at his funeral, to protect Emma, to keep her safe, to be the kind of mother who put her child first, always, no exceptions. But she also thought about those 20 faces in the folders, about their mothers, their fathers, their children, about the people still out there, still trapped, still waiting for someone to care enough to save them. 30 minutes. Sarah looked at her watch. She had 30 minutes to make a choice that would define the rest of her life, and Emma's, and maybe, just maybe, the lives of people she'd never meet, but who deserved a chance anyway. She pulled out her phone and made a call she should have made yesterday, the call that would either save them or destroy them. Her fingers trembled as she dialed 911. "This is 911. What's your emergency?" Sarah took a breath. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm at Great Plains Storage on Route 47. I need to speak to someone in law enforcement about a trafficking investigation. I have evidence, a lot of evidence, and someone's threatening my daughter if I don't hand it over in. She checked her watch. 28 minutes. There was a pause. Then the dispatcher's voice, suddenly sharper, more focused. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Do not hang up. Are you in immediate danger? I don't know, Sarah answered honestly, but I think I'm about to be. What Sarah didn't know, couldn't have known, was that she just triggered something much bigger than a local police response, because Marcus Reed's name was flagged in federal databases, because the FBI had been searching for his investigation files for 3 months, ever since his body was found in his apartment with a single gunshot wound the medical examiner had reluctantly ruled self-inflicted. Because Vincent Karam wasn't just a name in a folder. He was a person of interest in 6 states and 2 countries, a ghost that law enforcement had been chasing for a decade. And because Special Agent Rebecca Torres of the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force had been waiting 3 years for a break in the case that had taken her younger sister, whose name was Lisa Chen, whose folder was in one of the trash bags sitting at Sarah Mitchell's feet, whose face had been the first thing Sarah saw when she started going through Marcus Reed's files. Sometimes the difference between a random tragedy and justice isn't luck. It's one desperate person making one brave choice at exactly the right moment. The police arrived in 4 minutes, 2 patrol cars, lights flashing, pulling into the storage facility fast enough that other renters stopped and stared. Sarah stood outside Unit 217, phone still pressed to her ear, the 911 dispatcher's calm voice anchoring her to reality. "They're here," Sarah said. "The police are here. Stay on the line until an officer makes contact with you, ma'am." 2 officers approached, hands resting casually on their belts in that way that looked relaxed but wasn't. The older one, a woman with gray-streaked hair and sergeant stripes, spoke first. "Sarah Mitchell? I'm Sergeant Diana Hayes. Dispatch said you have information about a trafficking case." Sarah nodded, words tumbling out too fast. "Marcus Reed, he's the owner of this storage unit. Was the owner. I bought it at auction yesterday, and there are files. Dozens of files about missing people, and surveillance photos and names and locations, and someone's been threatening me. They know where my daughter goes to school. They want me to meet them in 20. She checked her watch. 23 minutes with everything, but I called you instead because I think Marcus was killed for this, and I don't know what to do." Sergeant Hayes held up a hand, gentle but firm. "Okay, slow down. Show me what you found." Sarah led them into the unit, pulling out folders, showing them the missing person documentation, the surveillance photos, the names that appeared across multiple files. The younger officer, barely out of his 20s, let out a low whistle. "Sarge, this is federal level stuff." "I know." Hayes was already on her radio. "Dispatch, this is Hayes. I need you to contact FBI field office. Ask for anyone working human trafficking cases. Tell them we may have recovered evidence related to Marcus Reed. Yes, that Marcus Reed. And I need a protection detail at..." She looked at Sarah. "Where's your daughter right now?" "Eisenhower Middle School, 7th grade. Her name's Emma Mitchell." Hayes relayed the information. "Plainclothes officer to Eisenhower Middle School immediately. 12-year-old girl, Emma Mitchell. Possible threat situation. Do not approach the child, just observe and secure." She turned back to Sarah. "Your daughter's going to be safe, I promise you that. Now tell me about this meeting in 20 minutes. Sarah showed her the text messages. Hayes read them, her expression darkening. "Northeast corner of this lot. They're going to try to take the evidence and probably silence you as a witness. We're not letting that happen." She looked at the younger officer. "Rodriguez, I need you to clear this area. Tell everyone there's a gas leak. Facilities closing for emergency maintenance. Everyone out now. Polite but firm." "On it." Hayes turned back to Sarah. "How much of this have you looked through?" "Maybe a quarter of the bags. There's so much." "Okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to secure this unit and everything in it. You're going to be taken to the station for your safety and to give a full statement. FBI is going to want to talk to you, probably today. And that meeting she checked her watch, 18 minutes? They're going to show up to an empty parking lot and a lot of very interested law enforcement. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, we still need to figure out how deep this goes. Hayes pulled out an evidence bag, started carefully collecting folders. This Marcus Reed, you said he owned the unit. That's the name on all the documents. I think he was a journalist, maybe investigating the trafficking ring, and I think whoever's behind it killed him and made it look like suicide. That's a pretty big accusation. I know, but look at all this. Sarah gestured at the bags. Does this look like the work of someone planning to kill themselves? This is months, maybe years of investigation. This is someone trying to expose something. Hayes didn't argue. She'd seen enough in 26 years of police work to know that suicides of convenience were rarely suicides at all. We'll look into it. In the meantime, I need you to understand something. If what you found is as significant as it looks, you just became a very important witness. These people, whoever they are, they've already threatened your daughter. They're not going to stop just because we know about them now. What are you saying? I'm saying your life just changed. You might need protection. You might need to relocate temporarily. You definitely need to take this seriously. Sarah thought about the car they'd been sleeping in, the motel parking lot that wasn't safe, the $287 that was now zero because she'd spent it on a storage unit full of evidence that had put a target on their backs. I don't have anywhere to relocate to. I don't even have a home. Hayes studied her for a moment, really seeing her for the first time. The worn clothes, the exhaustion, the desperation poorly hidden under adrenaline. You're homeless? 3 months now, me and Emma. We've been sleeping in my car. Something in the sergeant's expression shifted. Not pity exactly. Understanding, maybe. Okay, one problem at a time. Right now, you and your daughter are going somewhere safe. We'll figure out the rest. The FBI arrived 40 minutes later, 2 agents in dark suits who moved with the kind of purposeful intensity that made Sarah's stomach clench. The lead agent was a woman, mid-30s, Asian features, hair pulled back in a severe bun. She introduced herself as Special Agent Rebecca Torres and shook Sarah's hand with a grip that was just a shade too tight. Ms. Mitchell, I understand you've recovered files belonging to Marcus Reed? Yes, from a storage unit I bought at auction. Torres's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. I'm going to need you to walk me through everything you found, every document, every photo, every name you remember seeing. Can you do that? Sarah nodded, exhausted but willing. They sat in a back office of the storage facility's main building, while crime scene techs processed Unit 217 outside. Sarah went through it all: the clothing, the jewelry, the files, the missing people, the surveillance photos, the names. Vincent Karam, Dmitry Volkov, Elena Castellano. Torres took notes, her pen, moving across paper with precise, controlled strokes. When Sarah mentioned Lisa Chen's folder, the pen stopped, just for a second, then continued. This Lisa Chen, Torres said carefully. What do you remember about her file? Sarah closed her eyes, trying to recall details. Disappeared November 2016. There were notes about her being a student at State University, photos of her with friends, and Marcus had written something about a fake job recruitment, I think, like she was offered an internship that didn't exist. Torres set down her pen. Her hands were shaking slightly. Lisa Chen was my sister. She went missing 6 years ago. We got a ransom demand for $50,000, paid it, and never heard from her again. The investigator assigned to her case told us she probably ran away, that the ransom was a scam, that we should move on. Sarah's breath caught. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. You just gave me the first real lead in 6 years. Torres picked up her pen again. Tell me everything else Marcus wrote about her. They talked for 3 hours. Torres called in other agents. specialists in trafficking cases, and Sarah repeated her story again and again. Each time she remembered new details: a license plate number she'd seen in a photo, a shipping company name on a warehouse, the fact that several of the surveillance shots had been taken at the docks. "This is substantial," Torres finally said. "This is potentially the biggest break we've had in years. The Eastern Seaboard Trafficking Network has been operating for over a decade. We've arrested low-level operators but never touched the leadership. These files might give us that. What about the people in the folders? The missing people? Are they—" Sarah couldn't finish the question. "Some are probably dead," Torres said bluntly, "but some might still be alive. Trafficking victims are commodities to these organizations. They're kept alive as long as they're profitable. If we move fast, if we can use this evidence to locate their current operations, we might be able to save people. We might be able to find Lisa and 19 others like her." Sarah felt tears burn behind her eyes. 20 families, 20 chances. "What do you need from me?" "Everything you found goes into FBI custody today. We'll expedite processing, cross-reference with existing cases, start building warrants immediately. You're going to need to give a detailed deposition, probably testify eventually if this goes to trial. And Ms. Mitchell, I need to be honest with you about something." "What?" "You're in danger. Serious danger. The people behind this operation have resources, money, connections. They've already demonstrated they know where you are, where your daughter is." Marcus Reed ended up dead, and his death was ruled a suicide because someone had the pull to make that happen. These are not street-level criminals. These are sophisticated, organized, and extremely violent when threatened. So what do I do? Short term, you and your daughter go into protective custody. We have a safe house we use for witnesses. You'll stay there until we assess the threat level. Long term. Torres hesitated. "That depends on how this develops. Best case, we arrest everyone involved and you go back to your normal life. Worst case, you might need to relocate permanently. Witness protection." Sarah laughed, a bitter sound. "Normal life? I don't have a normal life. I'm homeless. I've been applying to jobs for 4 months with 0 callbacks. My daughter sleeps in a car. Witness protection might actually be an upgrade." Torres looked at her for a long moment. "How old is your daughter?" 12. Emma. "My sister was 20 when she disappeared. College student, bright future. She went to what she thought was a job interview at a marketing firm and never came home." Torres's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. 6 years I've been looking for her. 6 years I've followed every false lead, every rumor, every whisper. And in 6 years, I've learned something. The people who survive this kind of thing, the witnesses who make it through, they're not the ones who had the most resources or the best lawyers. They're the ones who had the most reason to keep fighting. You have a daughter. That's your reason. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it paralyze you." Torres stood up. "Let's go get Emma. Then we get you both somewhere safe. After that, we make these bastards pay for every life they've destroyed." The safe house was a ranch-style home in the suburbs, the kind of bland, forgettable building that could have been anywhere in America. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with bars on the windows disguised as decorative ironwork. An agent named Chen stayed with them, friendly but professional, a gun visible on his hip. Emma was confused and scared when they picked her up from school. Sarah tried to explain without explaining too much. They'd found something important. They were helping the police. They needed to stay somewhere safe for a little while. Emma, wise beyond her years from 3 months of homelessness, didn't ask questions that would make her mother lie. That night, sleeping in an actual bed for the first time in weeks, Sarah stared at the ceiling and wondered what Marcus Reed would think of all this. A desperate, homeless woman stumbling onto his life's work, finishing what he couldn't. She hoped, wherever he was, that he knew someone was listening, someone cared, someone was going to make sure those 20 people weren't forgotten. Her phone buzzed. A new number, not the threatening one from before. The message read, "You made a mistake. You could have walked away. Now everyone you love pays the price, starting with Emma." Sarah sat up so fast she nearly fell out of bed. She ran to Emma's room, found her daughter sleeping peacefully, Agent Chen standing alert in the hallway. "Everything okay?" he asked. "I got another threat." Sarah showed him the message. Chen read it, his expression hardening. "They're trying to scare you. It's a tactic. They know where you were, but they don't know where you are now. You're safe here." "How can you be sure?" "Because this location isn't in any database. It's not registered to FBI. It's not listed under any government agency. As far as official records go, this house doesn't exist. You're invisible, Ms. Mitchell, and invisible is exactly where you need to be." But as Sarah lay back down, she couldn't shake the feeling that invisible wasn't enough. Not against people who had made 20 others disappear. Not against an organization sophisticated enough to fake a suicide and get away with it. She thought about the auction, about the man in the suit who'd bid against her and then stopped, who'd been sitting in the black SUV watching her leave. Had he wanted the unit? Or had he wanted to see who would buy it? Had the whole thing been a setup? Too many questions, too much danger. And somewhere out there, 20 people were still missing. 20 families were still waiting. And Sarah Mitchell, homeless widow and accidental witness, was somehow the key to finding them. Morning brought FBI activity and organized chaos. Torres arrived at 7 a.m. with 3 other agents and boxes of the files from Unit 217. They set up a command center in the safe house's living room, spreading documents across every surface, building a visual timeline on the walls with photos and string, like something from a crime show. "We've been analyzing Marcus Reed's work through the night," Torres explained to Sarah. "It's extraordinary. He documented everything. Dates, times, license plates, financial transactions. He was building a RICO case, essentially, proving an ongoing criminal enterprise." "What's RICO?" Emma asked. She'd been allowed to stay home from school, too risky to maintain her normal routine. "Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act," Torres said, not talking down to her. "It means you don't just arrest individual criminals. You prove they're part of an organized conspiracy and take down the entire structure." Marcus was trying to expose not just the traffickers, but the people who helped them. Lawyers who filed fake documents, accountants who laundered money, police officers who looked the other way. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Police officers. 3 names Marcus flagged as potentially compromised. "We're investigating quietly, but it's why we can't trust local PD with your protection. This goes too high." Emma moved closer to her mother. Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "What happens now?" "Now we connect the dots. Marcus gave us the who and the where. We need the when. We need to find active operations, current locations where victims might be held. And we need to move fast because the moment Vincent Karam realizes we have these files, he's going to burn everything and disappear." "Who's Vincent Karam?" Torres pulled out a photo. The man from the auction. Suit, expensive watch, calculating eyes. "This him?" Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Yes, he was at the auction. He bid against me on the unit." Every agent in the room stopped what they were doing. Torres leaned forward. "You're certain?" "Positive. He bid $275. I bid $300. He backed off." "He backed off," Torres repeated slowly. "He let you win." "Yes." The agents exchanged looks. One of them, a man named Patterson, spoke up. He wanted to see who bought it. He wanted to know who to target. The unit was bait. "But why not just bid high and win it himself?" another agent asked. "Because then he shows his hand," Torres said. "If Vincent Karam shows up at a public auction and aggressively bids on a specific unit, that's memorable. That's suspicious. Better to let some random person win than quietly recover the contents afterward. Except," she looked at Sarah, "you weren't random. You were desperate. And desperate people are unpredictable." I called you instead of meeting him, Sarah said. That's why I'm unpredictable. You called us instead of protecting yourself, Torres corrected. That's why you're brave, or stupid, maybe both. Emma squeezed her mother's hand. Mom's not stupid. Torres smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her. No, she's really not. She's the first person in 6 years to give me hope that I might find my sister. That's not stupid. That's a miracle. They worked through the morning, Sarah answering questions, filling in details, describing everything she remembered from the unit. Around noon, Torres got a call. She stepped into the hallway to take it, and when she came back, her expression was grim. Marcus Reed's apartment was broken into last night. Someone ransacked it, took his computer, his files, anything that might have contained backups of his investigation. They're destroying evidence, Patterson said. They're panicking, Torres countered, which means they don't know we already have everything. They think it's still out there, findable, a threat to them. That gives us an advantage. For how long? Sarah asked. Unknown. Could be days. Could be hours. We need to identify current operation sites today, get warrants today, move today, before they realize the evidence is in FBI custody and they scatter. The afternoon became a blur of activity. Agents cross-referenced Marcus's surveillance photos with current property records, shipping manifests, warehouse rentals. 3 locations emerged as high-probability sites: a warehouse near the port, a private residence in the hills, a storage facility, not Great Plains, a different one, that had been rented under a shell corporation. Torres made calls, coordinated with other field offices, started the machinery of a major federal operation. Sarah sat on the couch with Emma, feeling useless and essential at the same time. This was happening because of her, because she'd raised her hand at an auction, because she'd opened trash bags instead of walking away, because she'd called 911 instead of meeting Vincent Karam in a parking lot. 20 people might be saved because Sarah Mitchell had been poor and desperate and brave, or 20 people might die because she'd tipped off the organization too early. At 4 p.m., Torres got another call. This time when she returned, she looked like she'd been hit. We have a problem. What? We just got word that a van registered to one of Vincent Karam's shell companies was spotted leaving the port warehouse. Traffic cameras caught it heading north on I-95. Accelerated speed. We think they're moving people. Right now. Can you stop them? We're trying. State police have the make and plate, but if they make it to a transfer point, if they switch vehicles, we lose them. And we lose whoever's in that van. Sarah stood up. So go after them. Stop them. We don't have probable cause for a warrant yet. We're working on it, but it takes time to... People are going to die while you work on paperwork? Torres's jaw tightened. That's the law, Ms. Mitchell. We can't just... Marcus died for this. 20 families have been waiting for years. My daughter and I are in danger because of this. And you're telling me that right now, right this second, you could save people, but you won't because of paperwork. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Sarah's voice rose, Emma watching with wide eyes. Either those people matter or they don't. Either we stop these monsters or we become part of the system that let them operate for a decade. Which is it? Torres stared at her for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. This is Special Agent Torres. I need an emergency warrant for vehicle stop and search. White cargo van, plate number. She rattled it off. Suspected trafficking victims in immediate danger. Yes, I understand the standard. Yes, I'm prepared to defend it. Get me a judge now. She hung up, looked at Sarah. You just convinced a federal agent to put her career on the line. Good. Now go save people. Torres almost smiled. You're going to be impossible to work with, aren't you? Absolutely. The warrant came through in 20 minutes. State police pulled over the van 40 miles north of the city. Inside, they found 7 women, ages 16 to 24, drugged and zip-tied. They found documentation proving they'd been transported across state lines. They found a phone with text messages coordinating delivery to a buyer in New Jersey. And they found a driver who, faced with federal trafficking charges carrying mandatory minimums of decades in prison, started talking. He gave them names, locations, schedules. The whole operation's architecture spilled out in an interrogation room while Sarah and Emma sat in a safe house, unaware that everything was about to change. Torres called at 8 p.m. "We're moving tonight. 4 simultaneous raids, port warehouse, private residence, storage facility, and a hotel where we believe Vincent Karam is currently staying. I need you to know that once this happens, there's no going back. These people will know who gave us the evidence. They'll know your name." "They already know my name," Sarah said. "They've known since the auction." "Fair point. I just wanted to give you a heads up. After tonight, your life changes. Could be for better, could be complicated, but it changes." Sarah looked at Emma curled up on the couch watching a movie, trying to pretend everything was normal. "Our life already changed. 3 months ago when we lost our home. Yesterday when I bought that storage unit. This morning when you told me I might have helped find your sister. It's been changing constantly. At least now it's changing towards something good." "I hope you're right." "Me too." The raids happened at midnight. Sarah didn't sleep, sat in the dark of her temporary bedroom, imagining what was happening across the city. Doors being breached, victims being freed, criminals being arrested, justice, finally, for Marcus Reed and Lisa Chen, and 19 others whose names Sarah had memorized from those folders. Torres called at 3 a.m. Her voice was thick with emotion. "We got him. Vincent Karam. We got 12 other members of his organization, and we found them." "Found who?" 6 of the missing people. 6 of the 20 from Marcus's files, alive. They were being held at the warehouse. "We got them out." Sarah started crying. She didn't mean to, but couldn't stop. 6 people, 6 families. Because of you, because you made a choice. Because of Marcus. I just finished his work. "No," Torres said firmly. "Marcus documented. You acted. There's a difference. And Sarah, one of them is Lisa. We found my sister. She's alive." Now Torres was crying too. 2 women separated by miles and connected by chance and tragedy and hope. They stayed on the line for a long time, not speaking, just breathing, just existing in the moment when everything impossible became real. The arrests made national news. "Major trafficking ring busted," read the headlines. "FBI rescues 6 victims." The stories mentioned Marcus Reed, the journalist who died investigating the case. They mentioned an anonymous tip that led to the breakthrough. They didn't mention Sarah Mitchell. Not yet. Torres kept Sarah and Emma in protective custody for another week while the FBI rounded up the remaining members of Vincent Karam's organization. 14 total arrests, charges ranging from trafficking to racketeering to murder, because Marcus Reed hadn't killed himself. The medical examiner, presented with new evidence from the investigation, reopened the case, ruled it a homicide. Marcus had been murdered to protect the organization he'd been exposing. During that week, Sarah gave her full deposition. Hours of testimony, every detail she could remember, building the case that would put Vincent Karam away for the rest of his life. The prosecutor, an intense woman named Alice Thornton, told Sarah she was the star witness. "Without you, we have documents but no chain of custody. We can't prove how they came into FBI possession. We can't authenticate them. You're the link. You bought the unit legally. You preserved the contents. You reported it to authorities. You're not just a witness. You're the foundation of the entire case." What does that mean for me? It means you testify. Probably multiple trials. Karam's trial, the other defendants' trials, maybe appeals. Could take years. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we keep you safe. On the 8th day, Torres came to the safe house with news. "We found 4 more of the missing people from Marcus's files. Different locations, different circumstances, but we found them. That's 10 now, 10 out of 20. What about the other 10? Torres's expression fell. We're still looking. But realistically, they've been missing for years. The longer someone's held, the less likely they survive. We're hopeful, but prepared for the worst. Sarah understood. 10 miracles were already more than anyone had right to expect. But 20 families had hoped. 10 were still waiting. That night, Emma asked the question Sarah had been dreading. "Mom, what happens to us after all this?" "I don't know, sweetie. Can we go home?" "We don't have a home to go to." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we ever will? Have a home?" Sarah pulled her daughter close. "Yes, I promise you, yes. I don't know when or how, but we're going to be okay." It was a promise Sarah had no idea how to keep. She had no job, no savings, no prospects. The storage unit that was supposed to save them had instead thrust them into a federal investigation that was protective, but also isolating. They couldn't leave the safe house, couldn't contact friends, couldn't return to any semblance of normal life. But the next morning, Torres arrived with someone new, a man in his 50s, kind eyes, introduced as James Reed. "Marcus's brother," Torres explained. James shook Sarah's hand. "I wanted to thank you for finishing what my brother started, for making sure his death meant something. I just found his work. He did the hard part. You made the brave choice. That's harder." James sat down. "I also wanted to talk to you about something. Marcus left his estate to me. It's not much. A life insurance policy, some savings, his apartment. But here's the thing. He would have wanted it to go to someone who believed in what he was doing, someone who risked everything to see it through." "I don't understand." "I'm giving you Marcus's life insurance payout, $50,000. Consider it compensation for what you've lost, for what you've risked, for being the person my brother needed when he was gone." Sarah couldn't speak. $50,000. Enough for first and last month's rent, enough for a reliable car, enough to give Emma a stable home while Sarah rebuilt their lives. "I can't take that." "You can, and you will. Because the alternative is me, sitting on money I don't need, while a woman who changed everything lives in protective custody with her daughter." James smiled. "My brother was investigating trafficking. He'd want his legacy to help someone escape their own trap. Poverty is a trap, Ms. Mitchell. Let me help you escape it." Sarah started crying for the third time in a week. Emma hugged her. James politely looked away. Torres watched with something that might have been hope. The trial of Vincent Karam began 3 months later. Sarah testified for 2 days, walking the jury through finding the storage unit, discovering the files, recognizing the danger, making the call. The defense attorney tried to rattle her, suggesting she'd planted evidence, that she'd fabricated the threats, that she was seeking attention and reward money. Sarah sat in the witness box and told the truth. "I was homeless, living in my car with my 12-year-old daughter. I bought a storage unit because I was desperate. I found evidence because Marcus Reed spent years documenting evil, and I reported it because that's what decent people do. There's no conspiracy. There's no fabrication. There's just a woman who stumbled onto something horrible and refused to look away." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Vincent Karam was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. 12 others from his organization received sentences ranging from 20 to 40 years. And 6 months after Sarah Mitchell raised her hand at a storage auction, she stood in the lobby of FBI headquarters with Emma, Torres, and the families of the 10 rescued victims. A press conference. Recognition. The FBI director personally thanked her for her courage and service. But the moment Sarah would remember forever came after, when Torres introduced her to Lisa Chen, Marcus Reed's sister, Torres's sister, a young woman who'd survived 6 years of hell and come out the other side. Lisa hugged Sarah, whispered thank you in her ear, and Sarah understood finally that all of it, the fear, the danger, the uncertainty, had been worth it. Epilogue. 18 months later. Sarah Mitchell unlocked the door to her apartment. Not a motel room, not a car, an actual apartment with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and windows that let in morning light, and smiled. Emma was at school, actual school where she had friends and stability and a normal 13-year-old life. Sarah had a job, administrative work at a nonprofit that helped trafficking victims rebuild their lives. Torres had recommended her. The salary wasn't much, but combined with what remained of James Reed's gift, they were okay. More than okay. They were safe. Her phone rang. Torres. They talked every few weeks now. Friendship born from shared trauma. "Hey, Rebecca, what's up?" "We found another one, number 11. Marcus's files led us to a location in Nevada. Woman named Jennifer Dawson. She's alive, Sarah. She's coming home." Sarah sat down, overcome. "That's incredible. It's because of you. All of this. 11 people home. 11 families whole again. A trafficking organization destroyed. Marcus Reed's name cleared. And it started because a homeless woman made a brave choice. It started because Marcus Reed spent years caring about people everyone else forgot. True, but you finished it, and that matters." They talked for a few more minutes, making plans to meet for coffee, comparing notes on their lives. When Sarah hung up, she walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Jennifer Dawson was reunited with her family. Somewhere out there, Vincent Karam sat in a prison cell. Somewhere out there, Marcus Reed's legacy lived on. And in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, Sarah Mitchell and Emma Mitchell had a home, finally, permanently. Built on courage and chance and the kind of desperation that either destroys you or defines you. Sarah had chosen to let it define her, had chosen to fight, had chosen 20 strangers over personal safety, had chosen to finish what Marcus Reed started. And because of that choice, 11 people were free. 11 families were whole. And one homeless woman had discovered that sometimes the difference between tragedy and triumph is just one person refusing to look away.